what I kind of want to dive into, first and foremost, why I'm wearing sunglasses is I got something in my eye and it keeps watering. So everybody who's going like, what's this asshole wearing sunglasses inside for? I'm sorry, it's an eye thing.
He's setting a trend. That's what's going down.
If I do happen to set one, then by all means.
With the Miami Beach shirt too. That's what's going down.
It's not about me today.
He's fantasizing about being in a warmer climate. Just saying.
He understands me.
That's what's going down.
Unlike, you in the garage climate, but we'll get to that. So it's not about me today though, and what I'm wearing. Unfortunately, it's about you. And since we kind of chatted last, at least on the show, what I want to know is, so a lot of things have happened, but I want to know kind of the transition when it became first an idea, and take us through to why you're in Sudbury now and what that's kind of looked like, and then we'll get into how adjusting's been.
All right, dude. Well, since you guys have seen now, I am in Sudbury, and I used to live in Hamilton, and I've always wanted to live here because I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of wonderful human beings like Mr. Glenn here, and a bunch of brothers and sisters of mine that I've had the opportunity to connect with. And a big part of my life, if you guys have watched the last episode, I was very isolated. And I didn't really believe that I can be anything more than isolated or sick. And what happened was I kind of built this dedication and this goal and this determination around getting myself independent and getting myself to be the best person I could be, to actually come full circle and kind of help others.
Yeah.
Whereas that's been a goal of mine since I kind of left the hospital bed. And what happened was I was studying for so long, and I recently just got my second certification for life coaching, and I've been doing personal training and all these different things. And it was getting to the point back home where it was I just felt like I needed to get out and figure out my own way.
Sure.
And the reason why that is because I was babied a lot of my life because I didn't have the capability to help myself or take accountability, right? And now with being healthy and, grinding for a long time to gather up the right resources, education, and just all in all, lifestyle, I've had the dream of being able to work as a trainer or a coach, and fulfill my dream and vision of what I really am passionate about, which is helping others and really speaking and coaching with regards to mentality, and the whole bit about that. And what happened was my mentor, he actually, of course, came up with a spectacular idea. And what was happening was I kept on going back and forth where I was almost afraid to leave my nest because I was scared, because I didn't know what it was like to be out on my own.
Yeah.
And I was almost over preparing every single step that I took.
For sure.
Because I was so used to being taken care of by my parents, by my family,
Yeah.
and also by hospital staff and just things like that. And my mentor, he looked at me and he said, "You're going to move to Sudbury." And he said, "Whatever it takes, you're going to do it. However it takes, you're going to do it. But you need to do it, because if you don't take this shot, you don't take this leap, it's going to deplummet your growth.
Sure.
And it's not going to allow you to get to where you truly want to be." And so what kind of lined this all up was I was able to talk with some really close friends of mine who have gyms and are very close buddies of mine who have actually had me in their gyms to do work in the past. But I went up to them and I basically said, "Hey, look, I'm willing to dedicate literally moving up here and providing as much service and as much capability as I could to fit into this role at your gyms." And I did that during 5 Cent City weekend, which was in August. And I talked to them both and I pitched them on, my niche, which is mentality. And thankfully, they said, "Let's do it." And then what happened is ever since after that step, I was like, I'm going to line up everything I possibly can to just get my ass up there. You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
And, thankfully, like you, I have this man standing right in front of me who's pulled strings for me, that without him pulling strings for me, I would not be here right now because I wouldn't have a place to stay. And it's been a really interesting journey so far, but I do not regret a single step in it.
Amazing. And I think what's really interesting to see, and what I want to know, What's been, because I want to kind of attest to something once I hear your answer, I'm really curious. What has been a few like challenges you've had to face in the last, like, you've been up for 3 weeks now?
Yeah, 3 weeks or so.
2 weeks, we're going on 3 weeks on Tuesday, I think.
Has it been that long?
I
want to say 2 weeks.
This will be the second weekend you've been up.
Okay, yeah, we'll say, yeah.
No, this will be the third weekend.
Right, yeah. So, okay.
Third weekend, yeah.
So it'll be about 3 weeks.
Yeah, so about 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Not quite a month. But what I want to know is, what were some like struggles you faced in that time frame though? Like, what were some of your top 3 like biggest challenges?
All right, bro. Well, great question.
Thank you.
You know, my mentor, before he had this idea, and actually when he pitched it to me, he told me, he was like, you know, you're gonna level up, but with leveling up, you get new challenges.
Yeah, of course.
And challenges you've never dealt with before.
Right.
It's
a game, right?
Oh, it's
like a video game.
It is a video.
Higher levels, higher challenges.
100%. And
but
different
you're ready
challenges.
for it. Yeah,
different bosses. And so for me, one of my hardest challenges has been definitely having faith in the process, and definitely knowing that this is the correct choice, and knowing that even though I've definitely taken a large leap to something I've never done in my life, and it's been very it can be very scary at times, but also very richful at times. It's definitely been a huge challenge to allow and just let go of whatever's happening is going to happen.
Right.
And I can only control what I've done so far. You know, like being able to have a vehicle now, and, you know, being able to live in and out of your garage for the first bit. That's all I can control, right? Yeah. And until I get a stable foundation, I'm just going to have to roll with the punches. And so something that I've really had to be challenged with is this has brought so much gratitude to my plate, because I've never had to be in a circumstance where I was almost out of shelter.
Right.
Like I've always, even in the hospital, like as difficult people could say it was, or I could say it was, is you always have warmth. Yeah. You always have blankets. You always have pillows. You never have to worry about freezing.
You don't always have pillows in the hospital.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, dude.
That's literally my quote.
Here. Yeah.
But you know, you have somewhat of comfort. A lot of the discomfort that comes in the hospital is internal.
Right.
And a lot of the things that are external just heighten that. In this circumstance, a lot of things are external.
Right.
And what I'm learning is my internal state is actually elevating the external state.
Right. And
some things I've had to adapt is like, okay, if I want to adapt to cold weather, I have to learn how to properly regulate my body system.
Yeah, your
thermoregulatory system.
Thank you, yeah.
And so with that being the play is like, I have to be much more disciplined on like jumping in cold water, taking cold showers, even doing deep breathing sessions that I didn't really have to do at home because I was so used to a conditioned environment, right? And then on top of that, I have to watch my body temperature when I sleep, because it's no longer that I'm just in a bed and I'm warm. And I've learned now with this experience the privilege of having a bed and having a room that's AC conditioned and regulated temperature wise, where I don't have to worry about comfort. I can literally just put my blankets on and I'm comfortable.
Sure.
Whereas in the garage, it's like I have to do it a certain way, and I have to make sure certain body parts are covered, and I have to make sure that this thing is on and this thing's turned off. And without all that, I don't feel as great.
Right.
So that's definitely been one of my biggest challenges. And then the second challenge I would give is, I would say, adapting to a new routine.
It's always the hardest.
Yeah, like adapting to a new routine. So I've always developed the habits of pushing yourself to do something every day until it becomes a routine. What I've learned during this time is like, it's much more harder to do that when you have so much uncertainty. When you don't really have a set schedule.
Right.
You have a set time for when you're working and when you're doing this, but it's like all that time prior, you're kind of all over the place and just in this loop of like, I need to get these things done, but I don't know how or when I'm going to get these done. And I have to make it a priority to get this in line before this thing happens.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of put like something I took advantage of back home on another level, where it's like here, it's not so much something I could take advantage of, it's something that I have to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say the last challenge would be being okay alone. And
Yeah, I've noticed.
And the reason why I've been struggling with that is because I love people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that got me healthy and got me out of the hospital was connection and belonging.
Right.
And I do have that everywhere I go, which is actually the main reason why I moved to Sudbury. Because I have so much family here, even though they're not blood family. And being in the house or being in the garage alone or being in my car alone or not being around people, or let's say nights when all my buddies may be having other plans and I'm at home, it's something where I have to adjust and adapt, where I have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And it's in a different state where it's not like I'm unable. I'm able to be with other people, but I have to learn how to be okay with myself.
Yeah, dude, and it's just like I found with being alone, and I think everybody kind of, there's being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're able to separate the two and understand, like I've gone through it where, and your good buddy Jordan talked about it on the show, and I've been kind of going through this a lot lately, is spending time alone just so you can get good at being alone. Like, consider it a skill. Whereas, like, I find sometimes I'm, like, anxious when I'm around people, but then not anxious when I'm at home by myself. Or I'm anxious when I'm at home by myself, but not anxious when I'm out with people. So it's really just, I just gotta be more aware of what's causing those things.
Right.
Whether it be, like, just overexhaustion or overexertion or, like, too much caffeine, whatever the case be, right?
Right.
But, excuse me, so what I see it as is with the reps of just, being alone, just getting used to it, and maybe like putting the phone down, going for a walk, kind of like being alone is being present where you are, right?
That's
the big
one of the
thing.
biggest things I struggle with.
Yeah, man, because I've noticed what you do is sometimes you're on, like sometimes you go phone and then you put phone and then you pace and then you go back to your phone and then you pace back to your phone. I'm like, is he okay? I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, do I say something? But I'm kind of busy. But now I notice, so now I'm not focused on what what's going on here. So yeah, but it's interesting that you're aware of it, because I think if you're able to kind of implement something that you can do, where it's like, even if you're like, I'm going out for a walk, I'm like, all right, cool, just don't get hit by a car, or if you see the kids that threw eggs at my window, go get them. But yeah, dude, like, I think it's cool that you're aware of those things. And in regards to, like, with climate and controlling that, and it's like, yeah, man, it's a lot colder up here. It drops. Like, if it was always cold, it'd be a bit better, but it drops, and then it goes back up, and it drops and goes back up. And those drops are what, dude, they get me, and I'm in the house.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can only imagine how you feel sometimes. And I've crashed in the garage before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. Granted, I have a lot more insulated and, like, different things, but, yeah, again, it's not like crazy industrial heaters, so and thankfully you'll have a warm place to stay when it does get colder.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, man, that's cool that you're aware of all that stuff, though. It's really interesting. There's with the challenges, what I'd like to know, what is something that what was something that you were looking forward to when you came up here, and then when it all happened, it blew you out of the water. Like, it would turn out to be better than you expected. Or would you say it's too soon to find out? Like, what was something really good that happened?
Yeah, I would definitely say I've had those things happen already.
Amazing.
Where one of the things I was most excited about coming up here was, number one, having independence, but being around friends and being around people who I truly feel super close with.
Yeah.
You being one of them.
Amazing.
And being able to know what that's like all the time. And I found that when I was back home, we could say that, we have a choice on our own energy supply. But a lot of the times, people's energy can also detriment that supply as well.
It does both, yeah.
Right? And so I found for myself at home, I was having a really hard time with keeping a steady climate of energy. And I do not like to blame others, but I would definitely say that it was much harder to be around different kinds of energy near home than it is here.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that when you surround yourself with people who are such more genuine or like-minded or people who are on the same path as you, therefore they're on your team rather than your opponent.
Yeah.
You do better when logically you shouldn't be doing better. Example is, I've slept like crap the whole time I've been up here. And back home, when I slept like crap, I was out for weeks because my immune system's already weak from all the past traumas.
Right.
And so usually when I don't sleep good, my immune system kicks off right away and it sets me back.
Interesting.
But being around the correct people and having good energy or good things around me that actually excites my emotions, excites my hormones and such, is like I'm more healthier. And I noticed this because when I was even back home, I would travel to Sudbury and I would travel to see you guys and you know my friends and family I call up here. And when I did that, my health would get better. And it was so alarming to me because it was like, it was like, this is so true.
That's cool.
Because I heard about it before and I studied it through my own studies, through holistic coaching, but like, I never experienced it.
Right.
Because I was so used to one bubble. Yeah. And then what I started to do was when I finally got the balls and the courage to get my driver's license, and I drove up here and I started visiting friends, every time I came up, I hit a new level. Even if, let's say, I left and I was on a week slate. Like, when I left this time to come up here and actually move here, I hadn't been sleeping for days.
Yeah, you didn't sleep for days and you got here and you
I was congested, I was weak, I was like...
Yeah, you were sick.
I was sick, and then within 2-3 days, I was healthy again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I was still sleeping in the garage, I was still, you know, being in a state where logically you shouldn't be healthier. You know what I'm saying? But... just having that energy or like that surrounding system of like support or like-minded vibe, it just brings you up. And it also, the biggest thing is it and you shouldn't allow this, but for me it's been a huge contributor because a lot of my life I haven't channeled this part of me, is like when you're around people who mess with you, you allow yourself to be yourself, if that makes sense. And that's not always a good thing that you want to keep on lock all the time.
No.
But when you have support that brings the best out of you, like encouraging wise, motivation wise, inspiration wise, it's much more easier to tap into that source.
Yeah, and that side of you.
And that side of you where you are...
It's a skill, right? You're able to develop it.
You feel solid in yourself.
Right.
And you're not looking for other people, or you're not looking for other things to validate that.
Yeah.
You already feel it around you, and you feel it within you. Yeah. You're like, this is amazing. And you feel such a solid foundation to just represent that foundation within yourself. So that's what I would say to that.
I think when it comes to like the transition and the moving over, one thing I've kind of noticed that I've been really like fortunate, you're very like, you're disciplined with things that I think a lot of people would take for granted usually because you're hypersensitive to things. And so what's interesting is whether it be like your diet and stuff, because you're like, yo, if one little thing's off on my diet, it's not good. Yeah, dude. But if something happens to my diet, I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then it doesn't really affect me. Yeah. But then you've kind of made me, and I'm really grateful for it. And we talk about, I'm like, dude, you know, Michael, I'm going to start eating more salads. And so... dude, it was weird. It was like my stomach was like, it felt heavy, and then I ate like a handful of the like kale. Yeah. Whatever. I ate a handful of kale and I was like, oh, my stomach feels better now. Yeah. I was like, this fucking guy.
Oh, bro, that's awesome. Thank you for telling me that. Dude. We discussed that briefly, but I didn't know that part. Yeah.
No, I did that like 2 days ago. I was like, why does my stomach feel like solid?
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah, man, it felt like a weird feeling. So I did that, and I was like, oh, it helped out, and I was like, oh, this guy. It's like, I really got to start fucking watching my diet now. Because that's something where I'm like, I've always been strong and in shape, so I don't really need to, I never really felt like diet was too important because I just never saw how a good diet could really affect me. And then seeing the benefits of it, even like in brief like doses. Yeah. In the very, very short term, like only this past week of doing it, now that I've been recovered from being sick and like watching my sugar, watching this, watching that, I feel like way better. I feel I'm like awake more. My brain just works a bit better.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
bro.
Man. So that's really cool.
I'm happy to hear that, man. Cool. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, dude. That's it's been something that one thing that I've noticed. What I really get a kick out of is, and why I'm happy you're kind of doing this like transition period, we'll call it, for about a month, where you're like, oh, come down late September. You know, I got a few weeks here at Glenn's house, and then you move to a place. right? And then you can kind of start fresh.
Yeah.
Where I'm kind of available as a resource when I'm here.
Right.
Right? And there's a lot of things, and I've been explaining this to people because what I think was interesting is like there's a lot of little things that I need to be more patient about because like you'll ask, the questions you ask are kind of ridiculous if I didn't know you.
Yes.
Like because I
And
know
that's
you
why
and
it's so
we have a
hard.
relationship, yeah.
That's been one of the biggest things, dude.
It's crazy because some of them I'm like, is he fucking messing with me right
Yeah,
now?
I know.
But then I'm like, oh, because I was talking with a few people before. I was like, yeah, like I'm like, okay, I know he's never lived on his own. But I'm like, when I didn't live on my own, I still knew how to operate a stove properly and do this.
Yeah,
I still knew like how to put my key ring on.
Yeah, I know.
Like little like door handle key locks, like all these things that I'm like operating. I'm like, he just doesn't know.
Yeah.
And then a lot of like some things I want to respond like how I usually respond at work, which is good because it kind of challenges me to be a bit like less abrupt. Because if people at work or something, if they can't figure out something or they have a question, I'm like, well, figure it out.
Right.
But I can't really do that with you because there's no base.
Right.
Whereas like often like me or somebody will have a base knowledge that they can kind of apply to figure out this problem, whereas you maybe won't.
Right.
So that's where I have to be a bit more patient because I'm so used to being like abrupt.
I can tell, dude.
I'm like, figure it out.
I can
like,
tell.
leave
I
me
can
alone.
tell.
But I'm like, no, Glenn. He can't figure it out because there's no base there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, Glenn, put this thing together for my key. I'm like, okay, well, without the instructions, fine. I know that things have to go in holes. There's X amount of screws, so all those screws have a place, and screws go in threaded holes. I know it has to be here. It's set up this way.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, I don't know. So I'm like, there's no base to start from. So I have to be more patient with that. But otherwise, seeing kind of how you've grown and you've learned, and then this transition phase, to my point, is really good. I think for you overall, because I'm gonna try to show you stuff as much as I've been exhausted.
Thank you, dude.
That's just my schedule. I'm trying to show you stuff and give you like some like basic skills or basic like how to start things. Because I think if everybody can kind of figure out most problems if you know where to start.
Yes.
Right?
100,000%.
But if you have no base or don't know where to start, then you can't really deduce anything. And you
100,000%.
can't deduce the problem, you can't figure it out.
Yes.
Right? And so that my whole thing is problem solving at work and stuff. So
Yes.
if you're able, I like this period before you get to like operating on yourself, because when you're in your own room or you have this own setup, you won't know.
Yep.
You'll be alone a lot more than you are now.
Yep.
And you'll be like, yeah, there's moments with friends, but then sometimes it's like you have to, if they're home, chances are they want to be using the same thing you are.
Yep.
Right? So you can't be asking them questions, right? So it's like now that you'll be able to, this transition phase I think is amazing because you're able to figure out the base stuff or the stuff that you don't know that a lot of people would know.
Yeah.
Just given the histories, and then go, okay, I know that like if the side of my pot starts to smoke, I'm like, okay, well, it's probably the food underneath. It happens everywhere, right? It's the type of stove. It is what it is. You're like, oh, fuck, like shit's on fire. I'm like, no, it's all good. You're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then I know that when you move out and that happens, you're not going to be like, you know, you're not going to look like an idiot when these strangers who don't know you are like, what's this guy thinking?
Yes.
Dude, it's nothing. You're going to be like, okay, whatever, it's no big deal. It's going to burn and melt. So
100%.
I think it's a good thing, this like period you have before you kind of dive in, like same with the internship, right? It's a period for you to
I agree.
go and test the waters and stuff. So
I agree.
yeah, man, I'm stoked for you. I'm stoked for how everything's gonna kind of fan out. And yeah, dude, what's something that like in the next year you're looking forward to the most?
Oof. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to the most is having a set schedule and a set routine, knowing that I'm living literally what I desired to live like 2-3 years ago.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like being able to know that, number one, I get to do what I love and I actually get income in supply of that.
Right.
Number two is I'm super confident because I've achieved something I never thought I could do, which was being on my own, being independent. And then number three is being able to fully adapt into me, who I am. Like understanding that I have no more limitations. I've literally hit where I wanted to hit.
Right.
And from that point on, it's just like I can just expand.
Right.
It's no longer about developing. It's about expanding.
Right.
And that's been the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm just going to continue to expand and expand and expand and develop.
For sure.
But to have that set in stone already within the 4 years I've been at this is like ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I like how you brought up that point about me asking those questions, because that has been my hardest thing. Because oftentimes I critique myself when asking those questions because I feel stupid.
Yeah.
Right? And I have to get out of my head
Mm-hmm.
and accept the consequences of how other people may perceive my questions.
Right.
And I've had it a ton where like people look at me like, "Are you serious? You don't know how to do this?
Yeah.
You don't know what this is?"
I
And
really hope I don't do that.
You
I
don't.
think I have.
You don't.
But I know
what I'm
you
saying,
do catch me at bad times.
But no, I'm not saying you do.
Yeah.
What I'm saying though,
Feel bad.
is like, when you brought up that thing about the questions,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, I'm glad that you're aware of like, and I'm glad that it's been able to help you, because that makes me it gives me more encouragement to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times I'm afraid.
Well, it's a good challenge. It's a good challenge.
It's a
both
very
ways,
good
right?
challenge, and I trust you, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's much more harder to ask those questions to someone who I may not necessarily know.
Right, or who doesn't know you. And
Right?
Stuff,
And it's like I have to almost, it's a stepping block of getting out of my head and letting go of whatever the other person may think of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the base things that I have to do almost every single day
Yeah.
when it comes to the littlest things. And then what usually happens is after they'll get to know me or whatever the case is. And my way of thinking about it is like, I know where I'm heading, and if they could see me struggling in that aspect, and then later on down the road see me on TV, giving value the way I want to give it, or achieving the goals I'm going to achieve, they can look at that as inspiration of like, wow, that guy who just asked me, how do I fill up my car with gas, is now touring and doing TED Talks. How does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, as much as how hard it is right now, I have to keep my eyes on what it's going to provide down the road, right? And when I completely, fully engage in that, usually afterwards I do not regret it. Never regret it. Never ever regret it.
That makes me like, I feel really good that you're able to challenge, and like it brings out a side of me that I'm like, hey, yeah, like we said, be patient. But so what I want to do is I want to ask you a series kind of to end a bit this chat tonight, and we'll do more of these, I'm sure, as we go in the next few weeks. But
of course we are.
Just to update and where we're going. But rapid fire. So I want you to say kind of the first thing or the first answer that
I'm ready. I'm loaded.
First answer that comes to mind.
Loaded.
Okay. Quick bullet point, not much thinking, if any. Best piece of advice your mentor has ever given you.
Oh.
First thing that comes to mind.
Oh, man.
Or the most impactful thing your mentor has said to you.
Well, the greatest thing my mentor has shown me and constantly told me and guided me to do is he has provided and guided me to show me my potential.
Amazing.
That is the ground foundation that comes to my mind. Yes, I could get into specifics of how, but like, that is the greatest thing I've ever received in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I knew from my mentor that I had potential to leave the hospital bed, or when I knew I had the potential to move out of my home, get my own vehicle, get my driver's license, speak, like, I've succeeded ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, when I never believed I had potential, I didn't succeed. And that was when I didn't want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so the greatest advice my mentor has ever given me, to keep it very short and condensed, is to understand I have potential.
Amazing.
That is the biggest thing.
Favorite quote that you've ever heard?
Oh.
Quick.
Dude,
I'm like, rapid fire Michael.
I'm trying to think of one, man.
Give me a second.
I'm trying to think of one. Dude, I can't think of a quote.
It could be best quote, favorite quote, one that you heard recently.
Like, this is going to be very generic.
Fine.
I've always heard this one. Growing up because my dad was a hockey fan. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Amazing.
And that's Wayne Gretzky, I think.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it is. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Like, who said it? Because I was like, it's one of the greats. It's either Jordan, like Michael Jordan.
Yeah,
or,
we talked about that. Yeah.
I think we were leaving Laurentian University when I asked.
We were, yeah.
We were talking about something. Women. But I digress. That's all I'm going to say on that. I know your mom watches, so what I'm gonna do, another one. Favorite book you've ever read?
Oh, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Perfect.
Easy.
Favorite pair of shoes you own?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say right now, just because I wear them a ton and they look good with everything and they make me pop and I love popping, Yeezy Zebras.
Nice. Most important skill a public speaker should have,
Ooh.
in your opinion? In your opinion.
Connecting with the audience. And what I mean by that is actually practicing focusing on how you're going to impact the audience rather than just speaking about you. And I had to learn that the hard way. And I've recently learned that. And ever since I learned that, I've been so much more successful and I've had so much more impact, which has brought back so many things full circle that I could never imagine if I just kept on telling it the same way I used to tell it.
What's the worst piece of advice somebody's ever given you?
Go be a landscaper. I'm not gonna say who, but I've had people very close to me who I love dearly during a time when things weren't very clear say that I should go be a landscaper.
Should go mow some lawns. Jesus. Okay. Amazing.
And that was through the times I was progressing.
Nothing wrong with being a landscaper.
Nothing wrong with
but
that. And actually, I'm
you.
thankful for that statement because it motivated me so much. And it challenged me. And it made me very hurt. But then after, not because landscaping's bad, I'm not saying that, but because my heart knew I had all this potential that I needed to live up to. And I knew that me just settling to be a landscaper, again, no shot taken. For me, that wasn't the route. And it put it in full circle that I need to see my vision before others saw it. And I'm learning more and more that the only way you prove your vision is you live it and you show it, because that's the only way other people will see it.
And that's a good way to end, dude.
I think so too.
I like that. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm excited for more.